Um, so did you all get your papers back fine and get my email about what to do for revision? Okay, great. So pretty much everyone did that. So that's good. If you would like to revise, you have until Thursday night. As I said in the announcement, I'm looking at it holistically, so make any changes that you want. I will pretty much be regrading it fresh. So as I said, the caveat is that doing a revision doesn't guarantee you a better grade, but I mean, if you follow my comments, you should get a better grade. So yeah, it's a great opportunity for you guys if you want to take it. I am pretty available every day besides today to do some meetings if you have any questions about my marginal comments or my global comments. Yeah, so just let me know if you need to meet about things. So we are pretty much a week away from really getting down to paper 2 and getting the peer review workshops set up. So I have a couple of things that I want to reiterate as we go into that. I have been grading assignments, and I want to emphasize that this paper is absolutely focused on creating multi-sided arguments. So your paper has to include that multi-sided argument aspect. I want to see your opinion, and I want to see you acknowledge an opposing opinion. That's absolutely critical to this paper. I'm fairly certain my rubric says that any paper that doesn't include that would get an automatic need for revision. So that everyone's on the same page, that is the big picture, what I'm looking for. And if you make sure you have that, you're meeting at least the assignment expectations in that regard. So as I've been going through your papers, I've noticed that we've got a great variety of people who agree with their articles, who want to agree but kind of change the method of how something needs to be done, or people who just completely disagree. And that's awesome. That means I get some great things to read and not just like, I agree with the article exactly. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. So specifically with the agree, don't think that, Tony, maybe you said that you agreed with your article and like didn't want to qualify any aspect of it. So when you start to, sorry, got someone coming into class. Hi, Christian.
What's good, Sheridan?
Good. Glad to see you. So if you agree with the article, the argument that it's making, you need to find a way to extend the conversation. I want to see attention to the argument that the article is making, but then your own thoughts. So if you agree with David Oss's article that the humanities deserve more respect and praise for what they're doing, you could say, I agree with what David Oss is saying, and to further that, we need to encourage more humanity programs in our high schools to foster this creative, complex aspect of learning. So something along those lines, where you're taking his argument and saying, yes, this is what we need to be doing about that. So you see how that's different than just agreeing with the article? Yes, excellent. Another example for the LA Times article about hunting trophy animals. You could agree that trophy hunting is bad, it should be illegal, and you could make the argument that the hunting of any endangered species worldwide should be illegal. So that's agreeing with the article and extending it further, bringing your own thoughts, opinions, and suggestions into the mix. So that is what I would be looking for if you just agree with the article. And if you want to agree but qualify, and Heather, I know you're doing this one, so you agree with what the article is trying to do, but you disagree with maybe how it wants to do it or another aspect of it. So if we think about the New York Times article that wants to extend internet access to all Americans in this time of COVID, we can say that, yes, the New York Times is right that the government needs to expand this program that has become something that everyone needs in order to participate in society. But the government shouldn't be the only one responsible for that. The private sector needs to step up and contribute. So once again, you're taking the original argument and extending it beyond the scope of what the article says. Flip the page. And then there's the obvious, just blatantly disagree, which is perfectly fine. I encourage anyone who disagrees with their article to write me a very convincing piece as to why I should disagree with it. Love playing devil's advocate. So if you disagree with Meyer's article about what the community and K-State students need to do to reopen the university as normal, you can say that, we've seen through student and community interactions that people aren't taking the necessary safety precautions. The number of cases of COVID positive cases in Manhattan, in the state of Kansas, in the Midwest as a whole are dramatically increasing, and therefore we need to move to completely online classes despite Meyer's best efforts to keep students in the classroom. So you can disagree with Meyer's claim, provide your reasoning as to why you disagree with it, and then convince your reader to also disagree with what Meyer's was saying. So that being said, if you take away anything from this little lecture, besides the multi-sided argument, as I said, that's the theme of the paper, please, please, please heed what I'm about to say, because I have been drafting so many emails with my colleagues. When you address people who disagree with you, you need to do it in a very respectful and tactful way. So the colleague that I work closely with is an assignment ahead of us, and he's got some students who are using a lot of ad hominem attacks. And an ad hominem attack is a direct attack, a challenge on somebody's character. That's when you disagree with someone and you call them stupid, or you call them, the example from my colleague is a capitalist pig. That's pretty much in every paragraph that this student writes. So that's not good. And I see a bunch of you chuckling. And it's not good because you're just shutting your audience off from your argument. You want to show anyone who disagrees with you that you are being attentive to the concerns that they have, which is why we are drafting a multi-sided argument, and that you are going to gently persuade them that they're wrong and that they should believe with what you're saying. We don't do that by calling people stupid. As I think you see in just the polarization of everybody in every aspect right now, it's very easy to shut people off from your argument. So the way that you go about that has to be done thoughtfully. So keep that in mind when you're addressing your opposing viewpoint, that most of the time people have reasons that they believe in what they believe. Sometimes it's not great. That's why we're focusing on very specific examples here. So there are people who have logical reasons to oppose internet access being expanded to everyone. These people might look at the costs of such a thing. The people who oppose trophy hunting, the people who don't oppose trophy hunting, they see the revenue that these countries are able to get by selling the permits to hunt these animals. So there are reasons, I'm ignoring the cat, there are reasons that people believe in what they believe, and it's important to consider that. So you don't, like I said, want to just call them stupid and say that they're idiots who don't have any reason to believe what they believe besides being unable to see the righteousness of your opinion. It's not the case. So that is probably one of the biggest points that I want to make sure that students understand going into the paper, is that be respectful. Don't write anything that you wouldn't want your grandma reading. All right.
So our audience, like in the book, it talks about, people you cannot persuade. And those are like people who are like dead set against you. And so they're not even in our audience, right? Like those really super duper strong. We're writing to a neutral audience, right?
You are writing to a neutral audience, but you want to consider the whole of it.
The other side, like if the other side's who's also, wanting the neutral audiences be like, hey, believe us, we want to write what they would be saying, right? Or, hey, they are going to say this, but
exactly.
I
This is why
think
you
that
should
this
believe
is
what I'm
this
saying.
way. Okay, all right.
So ad hominem attacks are also going to really be appalling to a neutral audience. This neutral audience that you guys are writing to for this second paper, they are theoretically open to hearing your point, but also open to hearing the point of the other side and making their own decision through that. So if we as writers start slewing ad hominem attacks against the other side, that neutral reader is going to see that and think, do I really want to be a part of this closed-minded group of people who doesn't seem to have any justification in arguing with the other side other than thinking that they're stupid and idiots? Like, that doesn't seem like an intellectual conversation to be had. I don't know if I want to associate myself with that. Does that make sense? So, yes, ad hominem attacks. Another great way to think about it is that if you wouldn't want to be called that yourself, it's probably not something that you should write, which is like what we tried to get the other student to understand, but then he responded to our email by saying, you're right, I'm not going to use that capitalist pig article. And we're like, well, okay, we tried. Okay, so I want to touch a little bit on the believing and doubting game, because from my perspective, I think that that's going to be one of the most beneficial assignments for you guys as students, probably throughout this whole semester. Because what we're trying to do is to get you guys to think critically about information that you're presented with. And I think this is it's a kairotic moment to be thinking about this believing and doubting game, because we're in the midst of an election cycle. So we're being constantly bombarded with advertisements on the local election level, on the state level, and even on the national level. So you're being inundated with rhetorical appeals, honestly. And if you guys want to, you can sit and watch these advertisements and pick out what rhetorical appeals are trying to be used to persuade you to vote for this person over another. Especially in the Midwest, man. Every frickin' politician is a family man with a lot of kids who grew up on a farm. And that's an appeal to pathos. They want you to connect with them. But anyway, when we do the believing and the doubting game, we're receiving that information and we're acknowledging the rhetorical appeals that are being used to try to persuade us. So, my example, the family man grew up on a farm, and the more you think about it, the more you realize that every frickin' election year, it's like the same frickin' ad with just sometimes a different person. But anyway, you begin to recognize that tug at your heartstring, that I'm just like you aspect, and that's why you should vote for me.
Could you repeat? You were saying it's the doubting and believing game. You're acknowledging and what?
You're acknowledging what is believable about an argument, and then looking for places where you can critique it.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
You're fine. So at the same time, when we're presented with those advertisements, we want to be critical about them too. I think a great example is politicians use a lot of ad hominem attacks, as you guys will see. They just spew data, statistics about the failures of the other person. And that's something to think about critically, because an ad hominem attack is a logical fallacy, technically. So that means that there's a big hole in your argument. So when you guys see information like that, you should automatically be questioning it. Because as I said, it's a logical fallacy. It's something that in academic writing would be extremely frowned upon, but who said politicians were academic? So that's one way in which you can be very skeptical about the information that's being presented to you. Another great example, and this comes up in most of our articles, data and statistics. You know, you want to identify where the data and statistics are coming from. You want to think about what's the population size, and that's something that with these election polls, I think a lot of people think about. You know, I've never been polled for anything in terms of an election. I'm sure you guys probably haven't either. So when you are presented with, I can't think of the current rates right now, but like 48% of the country is in favor of Biden and 42% is in favor of Trump. And you think, where is that number coming from? And what kinds of people are participating in that poll? You know, I wasn't asked to be in that poll, so are people like me? Is my population represented in that statistic? Or did they pick like a block of houses in New York City and poll all of those people? And you're gonna get an extremely different statistic there than you would if you did a truly random sample of the entire country. So that's important to think about too. Data and statistics are great places to be very doubtful and critical of information articles. That doesn't mean that it's not always true, but it means that you might want to dig a little deeper and identify where the sources are coming from. Places like the Pew Research Institute is a great credible source. So if a study conducted in your article is done by them, it's generally credible. But if there's not much information about where numbers are coming from, that's a great place to be extremely hesitant.
Could you repeat that name?
The Pew Research Institute, PEW.
Okay.
They do a lot of polls, especially around election years. No, or if counts about the population refer back to the national census, that's pretty much as reliable as you can get in terms of demographics of the country. So yeah, looking at your sources is the best. I mean, I think that that is one of the easiest ways to be critical about an article. So sharing that with you guys. Cool, so I touched on that as much as I want to. Okay, so the assignments for the rest of the week are going to get into identifying sources. And I have included in our course pack, there is a page that has links to, I think, 3 K-State library pages that talks about how to find sources. And they're going to be very helpful for you guys. I'm really excited that our library has such great resources. They talk about beginning your process for coming up with secondary sources, getting down to the nitty-gritty of what it is you want to talk about and how to find sources that address what you want to talk about. And from there, it introduces you to using the K-State database, which is awesome. We have so many amazing articles and archives to access. It's really cool. You know, if you're ever bored on a Friday night, just go through them and find some great information. We've got one on Japanese newspapers. The possibilities are endless, guys. My personal favorites and the ones that'll probably be helpful for you guys are called JSTOR and MLA. So that's JSTOR and MLA. Those are the 2 databases that are going to have periodicals, newspapers, and academic journals that will have recent and useful information. I think that the K-State websites go through those, but if not, those are the two that I use the most. MLA is going to give you the most recent information about things. JSTOR only has they have kind of like a 4 or 5 year delay, I think. So it's not quite as recent as MLA, but it's still extremely reliable. So if you're struggling, I recommend starting with those two. And then the other assignment for the week just continues our conversation about drafting multi-sided arguments. So as I've been trying to emphasize wholeheartedly this whole time, is thinking about your position, a position that differs from yours, and how you're going to relate the two. So that activity will help you develop those ideas, which, as I've said several times, is the critical point of this paper. So please pay particular attention to that activity. If you have any questions about it, please email me. Yeah. So I think the last thing that I would like to talk about is how to incorporate sources into the paper, because it can be a little tricky, and there's a couple of ways that you can go about it to maximize the clarity for your reader. I think when we don't incorporate sources effectively and properly, we can leave the reader thinking, how is this relevant? How is this quote that you're using relevant to your whole argument? Where is this quote coming from? I'm kind of lost, all those thoughts. So your book talks about a source sandwich, which is kind of cool, kind of infantile, but it works. So you think about incorporating your sources as a sandwich with a top slice of bread. It calls it filling, which I just found kind of odd. I don't think of sandwich as a filling, but yeah, the filling of the sandwich, and then the bottom slice of bread. So your top slice is when you introduce the quote. You want to discuss where it's coming from and how it connects to the argument that you just made. The filling is the quote itself, and it can either be a direct quote with quotation marks, or it can be a paraphrase of the source. Either one works. And then the bottom slice is how you respond to it. So it's not enough to just have the quote in there. You need to express to the reader how the quote is relevant to what you're saying, and they need to see your response to it. So if you pull a quote about people taking safety precautionary measures during COVID, you need to introduce the quote. So talk about where it came from, if it came from the CDC maybe. Use the quote and then discuss it. You know, the CDC says that people should be wearing face masks, but a lot of cities in Kansas have, I don't know what like the technical word is, but they've like challenged the governor's decision and made it so that in that city it's not illegal to wear the mask, to not wear the mask. So that's how you can respond to a quote that you present, just as an example. But you need to do that because your reader is not going to understand the connections that you are making. I think that was one of my most common comments on the papers as a whole, is that you should assume that your reader needs things spelled out for them, that they're not going to be able to follow the mental process that you have in writing, that you need to tell them pretty explicitly, this is what this means, this is why I'm using this quote. It seems a little weird, but it's one of those things that you get very used to. I've recently been reading some of my own writing, and I am extremely literal. And that is okay. That is what I'm looking for in your guys' writing. So it may seem weird. It may seem redundant. It may seem like, you know, your audience should be smart enough, but you're good. I promise. Another method that you guys can think about is the ICE method, and this is what I like better. I like acronyms. So it's ICE. You introduce the quote, you cite the quote, and you explain the quote. It's a lot more mature than the source sandwich, I think, but hey, between those two, you guys should have a decent understanding about what we're looking for in terms of using quotes, though. So
This is way cooler of an acronym. It's way doper, way better.
thank you. So as I said, introduce the quote. It's important, it is critical to say where it's coming from. Yeah, your reader's not gonna know where you're pulling your information from. You gotta tell them, you gotta tell me. I'm gonna sit there and think, where are you getting this? Where are you getting this? Where are you getting this? Cite your quote. Like I said, that can be in quotations. If you're using a direct quote, it needs to be in quotations. Or you can paraphrase, which doesn't need quotations, and then explain it. As I said, that the explanation is the most important part over the other two, because I'm looking for your thoughts on how things are related. You know, I want to see how you came to the conclusion that this piece of evidence benefits your paper. And I want you to tell me why that is. So if you're going to spend time focusing on any of the three of those, please focus on the E or on the bottom slice of the weird sandwich. So yeah. Yeah, as I said, your first assignment, I think it's due tonight, talks about sources. You don't have to find any for this part of the assignment. This is purely introducing how to go about finding them. I want you to interact with the K-State websites. I do have a brief quiz about what the pages talk about. If you look at the pages and watch the videos, you'll know the answers really easily. So it's just looking to see that you interact with the material that I give you. But this will be useful. As I said, navigating through the databases can be kind of weird, especially when you pick a database and you try to use keywords to find information about what you're looking for. That can be really weird. So there is one video that talks about how to identify keywords for what you're looking for to maximize your results, and that will be very beneficial to you guys. And then, as I said, the other one is drafting the multi-sided argument and thinking about the quotations that you're going to be using. And those are the only two major assignments for the week. The other one is just the reading quiz. And the sandwich may or may not be most of the quiz. So, yeah, that's all I got for you guys for now. Since you're looking ahead to next week, as I told you guys, I planned this final week before I planned anything else. So it's going to be a lot smoother than last time. Your rough drafts are going to be due on Monday night. So in thinking about that, if you need help identifying sources to use, incorporating quotes, anything, please let me know, because the better a draft you give your peer on Monday, the better feedback you should be getting from them. And also the less you have to do between Monday and Friday, which is always a bonus. And then, yeah, be thinking about anything that you have questions on, hesitations about, and schedule some meetings with me. I think I'm going to post a more comprehensive schedule of times that I'm available so that students can sign up for them, which I highly encourage. I do think that having me look at what you're writing is probably one of the best tools that you have in preparation for turning in the second paper, because I can readily tell you, no, this isn't what I'm looking for, or here's where I see some issues that can be improved before you turn in the paper. So
in these meetings, you could be like, here's my paper, read it, tell me what you think, and we can get it like beforehand, or
I would prefer it to not be the whole paper.
Okay.
And I can't guarantee that I would have time for that. I don't know myself what my class schedule looks like next week, but I can guarantee if you come to me with specific issues,
Okay.
is my thesis statement good? This one paragraph, I feel, do I use my quotes right? That I can definitely go over. So,
Okay. All right.
yeah. Any questions before we depart? All right. Yeah, keep in touch with me as you guys start doing your stuff, and I will see you on Monday.
Peace out, Sheridan.
Bye. Oh, you're welcome, Heather. I am certainly trying my best. I realized that, like, I had this realization this morning. I don't know how I would be doing this in person. They would have trained us differently, I think. They didn't really give us any instruction on how to conduct a class 3 times a week. So I'm like, oh man, I don't know. And we don't even have a whole lot of like information in the textbook. The textbook is really just going over assignments.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know how I would have done 3 50-minute class periods a week. God, I'm so painfully awkward. But it's fine.
I'd like look at your slides, and then I was like, how would you get 3 classes a week on all that, like enough stuff to talk about? I mean,
well, our book has more chapters than what we're going to go through, so I think that might be part of it.
Okay.
Our advisors did tell us that we would have been moving through these modules a lot faster, which
Yeah.
So maybe, I think in this class, maybe it's a good thing that we're online, because everyone can just kind of, 4 weeks per module is kind of chill.
Nice pace. Is there an actual like physical copy of the book, as in paper, instead of just being online?
I don't know about this specific version. I could ask. I have my practicum later today, so I will be talking with my advisors.
Would you? Because I hate online textbooks. Like, I am discovering this because I am interact with my textbook. I highlight and mark and put little pencils in the margins and things like that, and then I can flip back between 42 and 58 and see the same thing on the.
I'm with you.
And I can't do that. And it's just like, I have like my one color green highlighter where I can highlight important stuff, but I can't differentiate different things.
I can ask for you.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, I absolutely agree with you. And I tend to be a collector too. I still have every textbook that I've ever used, and I love them, and I will never get rid of them. And but as I've said before, I'm an English nerd. Does it surprise you that I have a crap ton of books? So.
Well, my sociology textbook, I sold that one back, and like medical terminology